Attention! If you've made it this far, it's not by chance. What I'm about to reveal today could completely change the way you see your spiritual life. But before we continue, I need to warn you, not everyone is ready for this truth. Have you ever noticed that every time you share a dream or a blessing, something seems to go wrong? People start looking at you differently. Doors that were opening suddenly begin to close, and you feel a resistance that wasn't there before. This is not a coincidence. There is a secret that God has entrusted to you, and if you don't learn to protect it, you may be putting your mission at risk. Today, I'm going to show you why some spiritual secrets must not be shared, and how silence can be your greatest protection. Jesus himself taught us not to cast pearls before swine, and Joseph suffered terribly because he spoke too soon. Could it be that you've also made this mistake without realizing it? Before we move forward, tell me in the comments, have you ever felt like something didn't work out after you shared it? I want to hear your experience. Nothing happens by chance. If you're here right now, it's because you were led by something far greater than mere coincidence. God has mysterious ways of guiding those he has chosen, and if this message has reached you, don't ignore it. When the Creator wants to speak to someone, he uses signs, situations, and even unexpected messages to reveal something essential. Have you ever noticed how certain words arrive exactly when you need them most? That's not luck, it's divine direction. There are moments when a simple phrase can awaken something deep within us, a confirmation that we're on the right path or a warning to change course. God works this way for those who have a greater purpose. When he wants to teach you something, he doesn't just speak. He orchestrates events around you. It could be a conversation, a dream, or even a video like this one. The question is, are you paying attention to the signs? Many people ignore these messages because they expect something grand, but God works in the details. What seems like a simple coincidence may actually be a clear answer to what you've been seeking in prayer. Joseph, for example, had revealing dreams about his future, but didn't immediately understand the greatness of what God was showing him. Have you ever experienced a moment when you later realized that God had been preparing you for something? Now, if God has brought you here, there is a reason. He wants to give you something, to awaken an understanding that you may have overlooked until now. But remember, not everything that God shows you should be shared immediately. Some spiritual secrets are treasures that must be protected, and that's exactly what we're going to talk about next. When God gives you a revelation, he is entrusting you with a valuable spiritual secret. Not everything God speaks to your heart should be spread to the four winds. There are mysteries that are yours alone, meant exclusively for your journey. Joseph, for example, received grand dreams about his future, but by sharing them prematurely with his brothers, he stirred up envy and faced severe trials. Would his journey have been different if he had kept them to himself? Keeping silent about certain revelations is not fear, it's wisdom. When you share something sacred with those who don't understand or appreciate it, you may open doors to resistance, doubt, and even spiritual attacks. How many times have you told someone about a plan, only to see everything suddenly start going wrong? That's not a coincidence. It's an invisible battle taking place. The enemy uses jealousy and disbelief from others to try to weaken your faith and steer you away from your divine purpose. That's why the Bible teaches us about strategic silence. Proverbs 13:3 says, "Those who guard their lips preserve their lives, but those who speak rashly will come to ruin." Knowing when to speak and when to remain silent is a powerful principle that protects your blessings and prevents your mission from being sabotaged before it even materializes. The spiritual secret God gave you is a gift, and valuable gifts should not be exposed to just anyone. So before sharing something that God has placed in your heart, pray and ask for discernment. Ask God if it's the right time and if the person you want to share it with is ready to hear it. Not everyone around you will understand what God is doing in your life. And when you understand this, you begin to see the importance of protecting what is sacred. But then, what happens when we speak too much? Let's explore that in the next section. Speaking too much can be one of the greatest dangers for those who have received a revelation from God. Not everyone around you has the capacity to understand what you carry. Joseph is a classic example. He shared his grand dreams with his brothers, and what happened? They became filled with envy, plotted against him, and sold him into slavery. What was meant to be a divine promise turned into a painful journey simply because he revealed it too soon. The problem with opening your heart too much is that you may be exposing something precious to people who do not share your spiritual vision. Some people do not truly support your success. Others, even without meaning to, may speak words of doubt that weaken your faith. Who hasn't heard a "I don't think that's going to work" right after sharing a dream? Words have power, and negative comments can drain your confidence and make you give up before you even start. Beyond that, there's also a spiritual dimension to this issue. When you speak too soon, you may be handing information to the enemy. Satan is not omniscient. He doesn't know the future, nor can he read minds, but he listens to what you say and can use your words against you. That's why Jesus taught us to be as innocent as doves and as shrewd as serpents. Matthew 10:16. Prudence means knowing what to say, when to say it, and to whom. Before opening your mouth to share something important, ask yourself, is this person trustworthy? Is this the right time? Do I really need to share this now? Silence can be your greatest protection because it shields what God is building in your life. And when we safeguard what is sacred, we strengthen our mission. But how can we know when to speak and when to remain silent? Let's dive deeper into this in the next section. The story of Joseph is one of the greatest lessons on the importance of strategic silence. When he received dreams from God revealing his future greatness, he was so excited that he ran to tell his brothers. But instead of celebration, he found envy, betrayal, and suffering. By speaking too soon, he unknowingly awakened opposition and put the fulfillment of God's promise at risk. How many times do we do the same, sharing our plans with the wrong people only to face unexpected obstacles? Envy is a silent but powerful force. Joseph was Jacob's beloved son, and his brothers already harbored resentment against him. When they heard about his dreams, it only intensified their desire to bring him down. The same happens with us. Often, those who should support us are the first to discourage us. Not because they are bad people, but because they don't always have the vision to see beyond what their eyes perceive. What's most remarkable is that, despite going through so many trials, Joseph never lost faith. He was sold into slavery, wrongfully imprisoned, and forgotten in jail. But all of it was part of God's plan to shape him and prepare him for the great position that awaited him. In the end, Joseph became the governor of Egypt and was able to save his family and an entire nation from famine. God fulfilled his promise, but the process was painful. If Joseph had kept that initial revelation to himself, would he have avoided so much suffering? Maybe. But the most important lesson we learn from him is that God fulfills his promises at the right time, regardless of the challenges. The key is to trust, be patient, and learn to keep quiet when necessary. And this leads us to another powerful biblical principle: strategic silence as a form of protection. Silence can be one of the most powerful weapons to protect what God has placed in your heart. In the world where everyone wants to be heard, few understand the value of keeping quiet. Jesus himself set this example many times. He knew when to speak and when to remain silent, especially in front of those who were not ready to understand his mission. If even the Son of God chose his words wisely, how much more should we? Many battles are won without a single word. When we remain silent, we give God time to act and prevent opposing forces from rising before their time. Imagine a farmer who plants a precious seed and then digs it up the next day to show it to others. He would be killing his own harvest. The same happens when we prematurely share our revelations. We may prevent them from growing and bearing fruit as God intended. Proverbs 17:28 says, "Even a fool is considered wise when he holds his tongue." This means that many times silence protects us from criticism, envy, and even our own impulsiveness. Not everyone deserves access to what God is building in your life. The enemy cannot steal a plan he doesn't know about, and ill-intentioned people cannot destroy what they can't see. Silence is not weakness. It is a way of preserving what is sacred. But how can we know when to speak and when to remain silent? The answer lies in prayer and discernment. God always gives us signs about who is trustworthy and when the time is right. The key is to learn to listen to God's voice more than the voices of others. When we protect our spiritual secrets, we understand that they are like rare treasures that must be guarded with wisdom. Not everything that God reveals should be shared with just anyone. Just as a rare jewel is not thrown on the ground to be trampled on, spiritual secrets must be kept and shared only with those mature enough to value them. Jesus taught this truth clearly in Matthew 7:6. "Do not give dogs what is holy. Do not throw your pearls to pigs." In other words, there are sacred things that should not be exposed to those who are incapable of understanding them. If you have ever tried to share something deep with someone who did not have the same spiritual vision, you probably realized that instead of support, you received criticism or even mockery. This happens because not everyone is ready to see what God has shown you. Some people will minimize your experience, doubt your calling, or even try to lead you off course. That's why it is essential to discern who to share with what God has entrusted to you. Imagine that you find a rare diamond, and instead of keeping it in a secure vault, you start showing it to everyone. What would happen? It could be stolen, undervalued, or even broken by carelessness. The same applies to spiritual secrets. They must be protected until God reveals the right time and the right person to share them with. Strategic silence is not about hiding. It is about preserving something precious until it can shine at the right time. When we understand this, we start acting with greater wisdom. Instead of talking too much, we pray more. Instead of seeking validation from others, we seek confirmation from God. And this leads us to a fundamental principle. God's timing is essential, and speaking too soon can compromise an entire purpose. Everything in life has its right time, and when we try to rush God's plans, we end up creating problems that could have been avoided. Joseph received a powerful dream, but by speaking too soon, he faced years of suffering. Moses knew he was called to free the people of Israel, but by acting ahead of God's timing, he had to flee to the desert for 40 years. The wrong timing can turn a promise into a burden. Many times, anxiety makes us want to share everything, seeking validation or support. But not everyone can see what God has revealed to us. When we speak before the right time, we can open doors to envy, discouragement, and even spiritual attacks. It's like taking a cake out of the oven before it's fully baked. Instead of a delicious meal, we are left with something raw and useless. God's purpose needs time to mature before being exposed. Proverbs 3:5-6 teaches us, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding." This means that instead of trying to control everything, we must trust that God knows the right time for everything. If He gave you a vision, He will also determine the time to make it public. Until then, silence and patience are essential to protect what is still being shaped. But how do we know when the right time has come? God always gives us signs. When the promise is ready to be revealed, you will feel peace. Doors will open naturally, and the right people will appear to help you. Until then, the key is to pray, wait, and trust. And what if we notice resistance and envy when we talk about our promises? That can be a warning sign to be even more careful. Whenever you share something great that God has placed in your heart, pay attention to the reactions. If you encounter resistance, unfounded criticism, or even envy disguised as concern, that could be a red flag. Not all opposition comes from the enemy. Sometimes it comes from people close to us who can't handle our growth. Joseph experienced this firsthand. His own brothers, instead of celebrating his vision, became his greatest opponents. Envy often hides behind seemingly harmless words. Comments like, "I think you're dreaming too big," or "Be careful not to get disappointed," can weaken your faith without you even realizing it. Those who cannot see beyond the natural will not understand what God is doing in your life. That's why we must seek discernment before opening our mouths. Resistance can be a sign that we are speaking to the wrong people. Even Jesus faced this. When he returned to his hometown, he was rejected because people only saw him as the carpenter's son. They could not accept that he was the Messiah. This teaches us a valuable lesson. Sometimes the most familiar places and people are the ones who resist our calling the most. And when we face resistance, we need to remember that this doesn't mean God was wrong. It means he is showing us who is truly on our side. So what should we do when we notice envy and resistance? Simple: strengthen our prayers and reinforce strategic silence. God never asks us to entrust our dreams to those who could destroy them. And if resistance is increasing, maybe it's time to stop talking and start acting in silence. But there is one powerful weapon that protects us against all envy and opposition: constant prayer. Prayer is the shield that protects everything God has placed in your life. When you pray, you not only strengthen your faith, but also build a spiritual barrier against attacks, envy, and negative influences. Many dreams have been destroyed because they were exposed without spiritual covering. Joseph spoke too soon and faced betrayal, but David, before making any important decision, sought God's counsel. Which of the two had a more balanced journey? Talking about your plans without praying first is like going into battle without armor. You become vulnerable to outside opinions, doubts, and even spiritual attacks. Prayer aligns your vision with God's and gives you clarity about the right time to act. When you place your revelations in his hands, you receive direction and discernment to know who to share them with and when the time is right. Additionally, prayer brings peace in the waiting. It's not always easy to keep quiet, especially when we are anxious to see God's promises fulfilled. But when we pray, we surrender control to God and rest in the certainty that he is working. Philippians 4:6 reminds us, "Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God." So, before opening your mouth to share something, open your heart in prayer. God always responds, whether with peace, a sign, or even a warning to wait a little longer. And beyond strengthening your spiritual protection, prayer also helps build something essential: a circle of trust with the right people to walk alongside you. Not everyone who smiles at you is rooting for your success. Some people are just waiting for the right moment to criticize, doubt, or even sabotage your plans. That's why creating a circle of trust is so important. Jesus set this example when he carefully chose his disciples. He had many followers, but he only shared the greatest secrets of the kingdom with a small group who were prepared to receive them. Having discernment to choose who to share your spiritual secrets with can make the difference between moving forward or being held back by words of disbelief. If Joseph had shared his dreams only with those who truly supported him, his journey might have been less painful. Too often, we trust the wrong people out of loneliness or naivety and end up getting hurt. Knowing who deserves to hear your plans is a way to protect your mission. So, how do we identify who deserves to be in our circle of trust? First, observe their actions. People who truly rejoice in your growth are rare, and these are the ones who should be by your side. Second, ask God for guidance in prayer. He always reveals who is near out of interest and who genuinely wants to see you prosper. Having a few trustworthy people is better than having many who could threaten your purpose. Creating this circle of trust doesn't mean living in constant suspicion of everyone. It means having wisdom to separate those who build you up from those who only drain your energy. When you protect your promises and walk alongside the right people, you become stronger to fulfill what God has called you to do. And one of Jesus' greatest teachings about this is the principle of not casting pearls before swine. It's not enough to simply protect your spiritual secrets. You must also choose carefully the people you walk with. Not everyone who smiles at you wants the best for you. Just as Jesus had a close circle of disciples whom he trusted, we also need people who share the same faith and spiritual vision. A wrong piece of advice from someone without discernment can steer you away from God's purpose. Joseph trusted the wrong brothers and was betrayed. Samson opened up to Delilah and lost his strength. But Jesus entrusted his teachings to the right disciples, and the message of the gospel remains to this day. The secret is to discern who deserves access to what God has shown you. Not every friend is an ally, and not every relative understands your mission. Choosing your circle of trust wisely can be the difference between growth and being hindered. First, observe who strengthens you spiritually, not just those who are around when things are going well. People sent by God encourage your faith, pray for you, and do not try to lead you away from your path. Proverbs 27:17 says, "As iron sharpens iron, so one person sharpens another." The people God places by your side are meant to strengthen you, not weaken you. Having a circle of trust doesn't mean telling these people everything, but it does mean knowing that there are times when we need wise counsel and shared prayer. Choose to surround yourself with those who seek God's presence, because these people will be part of your spiritual growth. And when we understand this, we realize why Jesus taught us so much about the wisdom of silence. Jesus gave us one of the greatest lessons on wisdom and discretion when he said in Matthew 7:6, "Do not give dogs what is sacred. Do not throw your pearls to pigs." In other words, there are precious things that should not be wasted on those who cannot value them. Divine revelations are like rare jewels. If they are entrusted to the wrong people, they can be trampled on, ridiculed, or used against us. Throughout Jesus' ministry, we see that he carefully chose with whom he shared certain truths. He spoke in parables to the crowds, but revealed deeper mysteries only to his closest disciples. And even among them, there was an even more intimate circle, Peter, James, and John, who witnessed events that the other disciples did not, such as the transfiguration on the mountain. This teaches us that not everyone is ready to hear everything. The mistake many make is talking too much and then feeling frustrated when others don't understand. Have you ever shared something important and been met with skepticism or dismissal? That doesn't mean your vision is wrong. It just means you may have spoken to the wrong people. Not everyone understands the language of faith. Some will doubt, others will mock, and some may even try to stop you from moving forward. That's why it is essential to practice discernment and strategic silence. If even Jesus, who had all divine wisdom, carefully chose with whom he spoke, how much more should we? Learning to keep certain spiritual secrets is a form of obedience and protection. After all, God has a perfect plan, but it is up to us to preserve it until he shows us the right time to act. Now, you know, not everything should be said, and not everyone deserves access to what God has placed in your heart. Strategic silence may be the key to protecting your blessings and avoiding unnecessary battles. God has a purpose for your life, but it is your responsibility to guard and value the spiritual treasures he has entrusted to you. So, the question is, who have you been sharing your dreams with? Have you been speaking too much and exposing your promises to the wrong people? Today is the day to change that. Pray, seek discernment, and start practicing silence as a form of protection and wisdom. And I want to know, what was the biggest lesson you took from this message? Have you ever felt that speaking too much harmed you? Comment below, because your experience could help others understand this important truth. Oh, and if this content made sense to you, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, because here we talk about spiritual secrets that few reveal. Don't miss the next videos.